Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings and thank you for joining me, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. You can listen on air or online at any venue that you like, such as iHeartRadio, Odyssey, TuneIn app, smart speakers, nccradio.org, or on our own award-winning and free, just download it, WHPC app. Herbally Yours continues to bring you the latest information about the world of natural living. And today we're so happy to have as our guest Dr. Ken Redcross. Dr. Redcross is the author of Bond, the Four Cornerstones of a Lasting and Caring Relationship with Your Doctor, and founder of Redcross Concierge, a personalized medical practice designed to enhance the patient-doctor relationship while providing convenient access to a full spectrum of healthcare services and holistic and wellness counseling. Dr. Redcross earned his medical degree from Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center in New York and specializing in internal medicine. And he also participated in fellowships in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic to fulfill his passion of serving the underserved while enhancing his medical fluency in Spanish. Dr. Redcross is based in New York and offers medical consults virtually from anywhere you are. He is also an advisor for Healthy Directions. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Ken.
Oh, thank you so much, Alan. I always love being on the show, so thanks for inviting me back.
Now, moving back in time a little bit, because I'm always so fascinated. And when I first saw your information, I was so thrilled because, of course, you talk about good medicine, science-based medicine, and that always includes natural therapies because that really is good science-based medicine. True. But when I first saw you and your name was Dr. Redcross, I said, oh, that has to be a really good marketing ploy. and then Dr. Kelton tells me that is actually his last name.
Yes, it is. I hear it all the time. Let me tell you. So it's a Native American last name, Ellen, which is kind of funny because I wonder if that's where kind of my roots were for more holistic, natural medication. And I didn't know, the importance at that point. But, it's kind of molded me into the provider or the physician that I am now, where, as you mentioned, I'm Western trained, but gosh, I'm so more open to the holistic ways of healing now, which is probably my Native American roots.
Yes, initially it could be, but also as a clinician like you are reading the literature, truthfully, now the NIH has decided that they have a giant project called Food is Medicine, and also that even natural remedies such as botanical interventions and nutritional interventions are evidence-based and actually have better outcomes at lower cost.
Yeah, and that's such an important thing that you bring up here, which is exciting, right? Because you're talking about a Western-trained physician for over 20 years, everyone. And so it's beautiful to talk about these things because it's almost like I've seen the light some years ago, but now it's like medicine is actually seeing the light and realizing that we can use these botanical and other things to really further our health and our healing.
It's true. And of course, then one thing that's going on of a more modern nature at this point is what you're talking about here in terms of TikTok health hacks.
Yes.
And I am obsessed with the horror of that, to tell you the truth, because I see a lot of young people, both male and female and in between, whatever, saying things, in my case, about herbs that are completely wrong and extremely dangerous. And this is where people are getting their information.
I know, and it's so scary, and that's why I realized it was kind of time to hit the airwaves to kind of, as you're saying too, kind of set everything straight so that we can really get the real education and science behind some of these beautiful and wonderful botanicals, which can be wonderful, but you have to know how to use them and who they're for.
And in particular, your own, if you're on any pharmaceuticals, possible herb-drug interactions, which are very real. I saw one the other day. A young woman was talking about St. John's wort. On her very video, she spelt it St. John's W-A-R-T, like a wart that someone has.
Yeah, that's a problem, Ellen.
Yes, because it's truthfully W-O-R-T, and wort means plant in Old English. That's why we see so many plant names that end in it, like St. John's wort, motherwort, etc. But she had no knowledge of herbal medicine, and here she is telling people to take St. John's wort, W-A-R-T, I guess to get rid of warts. I don't know. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the whole point when you're seeing these TikTok. It's funny, Alan, I always joke around and say that's TikTok doc the way there used to be Dr. Google. But that's why, I'm glad that you have your show so that everyone can get sort of educated around the best way to use the botanicals, understand the botanicals, and hopefully educate some of their friends and family that may see that TikTok that you're talking about, which is really wrong and off.
Right. And dangerous, because she was going right on and saying, oh, if you have depression, just take this. Well, most people who have depression, if it has been actually recognized medically, are often on antidepressive medications, which can massively interact with herb.
Oh, big time. And so when you talk about that, I'm glad you mentioned because there's things that I talk about. So as we touch on some important botanicals today, there's 3 questions you should always ask your doctor. One of them, you absolutely nailed it there, Ellen, when you're talking about, are there any drug-to-drug interactions with what you're taking? So your doctor needs to know that. You also want to make sure, is there anything that makes it a contraindication? In other words, do you have liver disease? Do you have kidney disease? These are things that you need to understand about the botanicals, and that your doctor obviously knows that you need to discuss along the way. The other thing I mention a lot too, Ellen, is as you look at the supplements and so forth, I always like when patients bring them in. I like to go line by the ingredient, and it really causes or creates a nice bond between the doctor and the patient that's bringing that in, so that we can get even more education around the botanical.
Yes, I do that too. Now, when you're talking about do you have an actual physical office at this time? Or are you talking about if you had a virtual meeting with someone?
Oh, no. I'm usually talking virtual. I used to have a kind of a brick and mortar, everyone, kind of before COVID. But now I always say my office is your home, because I make so many house calls. And it's a lot more warm and sometimes than the brick and the mortar.
So you can actually, because do you find this, Dr. Redcross, people may say, first of all, they don't feel well. How come they have 50 bottles of all a variety of herbs and supplements? They don't feel well. It's obviously not working. But also, when you look through them, you might find a particular nutrient, let's say vitamin B6, which you should never have more than 250 milligrams of in any one day. But they have a multiple that has B6 in it. They have a hair, skin, and nails.
Yep. It's in everything.
Right.
Exactly. And so that gets back to looking at your labels, everyone. Vitamin D is that way as well. You know me, I am a huge vitamin D lover. I think everyone out there listening should not only know their levels, but should know those great levels should be between 40 and 60, actually. And so when you look at your supplement, you'll see vitamin D kind of thrown in everything. So when you're taking these botanicals or other supplements, let's realize that these, in essence, Ellen, I mean, they're medications too, everyone. They're just available without prescription, but used properly, they can treat you the way prescriptions would from Western medicine, but you need to kind of understand what's in each thing you're taking.
It's really important. And are you overdoing it? Because you might not know, okay, there's this many milligrams in the B, there's this many milligrams in the hair, skin, and nails, there's this one in the mood support, but you would know. Let me just throw out a really good thing to pharmacists as well, because if you can't get in to see your doctor, which I needed like just an ear checkup. It took like 2 months. If it was an emergency, who knows? But pharmacists are a wonderful resource to check on supplement and drug interactions, and also whatever drugs you're on of interactions with each other.
No, and that's a good point as well, because, unfortunately, part of the reason why I created my concierge practice and so forth is because I didn't have enough time with the patients that I wanted. And that's all around the United States. And luckily, our pharmacists are there to when you can actually go that little consultation section and you can actually walk over there when you're in the line. So that's a very good point to bring up, Ellen, that, you can actually go and get a little bit of understanding of whatever your questions answered. Also with the pharmacist as a partner in your health along with your physician.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes they're more accessible because they're right in your neighborhood.
Exactly.
And you don't have to wait 3 months to get in there and ask them. And they do have good resources that they can look up easily in terms of the interaction question.
Absolutely.
So you're really involved right now with talking about a particular supplement that I've heard a lot of buzz about, because let's go to the drug, Ozempic, which is like all over the place, and it's being promoted like, you don't have to do anything, and all of a sudden you're going to be svelte and thin and gorgeous.
Well, that's not the way life works, Ellen. You know that. And most people, it's no one magic bullet that helps. But, it's when you mention the TikToks and some of these hacks and so forth that go back that make you and I cringe lots of times, I will be very happy. I am very happy, I should say, rather, for Dr. TikTok in this case, because they brought a beautiful botanical to the forefront, which is, as you mentioned, Ozempic. Well, it brought up berberine, everyone, which is something that's utilized to support blood sugar and can help with cholesterol and some of those things, similar to what Ozempic can do, but works totally differently, and is not known to have this drastic weight loss that you see with Ozempic. So they're very different, but I understand the similarities. But without that TikTok kind of getting it wrong, Ellen, we wouldn't have been talking about berberine as much in the news as we are.
That's true. And berberine is found naturally. A lot of people may actually have it right in their yard, particularly in the Northeast, if you have any plants which are barberry bushes.
Correct, yes.
Many people do, although they're no longer selling that as a plant because they feel it's invasive. But so many houses in north and eastern areas have them. And if you're on the West Coast, you have Oregon grapefruit. And those are excellent sources and less expensive sources of berberine than golden seal. By the way, only the golden seal root actually.
Yes, exactly,
berberine.
exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's only the root of golden seal, which is more expensive than the barberry and the Oregon grape, as you mentioned. And the other good part that I like about that is the fact, as we're talking about these different regions, it kind of lets us know as well, because I talk a lot as well, Ellen, is where are you getting your berberine? Because what's happened since this Ozempic sort of challenge came up, you see berberine springing up everywhere. And so you have it on Amazon, you have 5 or 6 or 7 or more. And so it's so dizzying for a lot of my patients, Ellen, because they're like, well, doc, how do I know what the best berberine is? How do I know how to sift through? And I always tell them there's one thing in particular that I want you to always look for. I always tell them to look for the seals, the GMP, which means good manufacturing practices, Alan. So important to make sure, as I like to say, that the company you're looking at is vetted and formulated by doctors, and that third party designation has already been done. And that's not easy to find. One of the lines that I enjoy talking to patients about is the doctor's preferred line of berberine. I like it because it has the research dose, actually, Ellen, which is 1,500 milligrams. I know that it also has the seal, the GMP seal, and I also like the fact that it has some complementary ingredients as well, which I know you're familiar with as well, such as chromium, cinnamon, the banaba leaf. All these things are all very helpful and beneficial to help support blood sugar. So when you're looking through those things, whether it's the one from doctor's preferred or not, I need you to look for these seals, because that means that there's been a third-party designation that's come in and make sure that what you're getting is really berberine and not something else.
Right, and berberine is often extracted, like you mentioned, from various plants. But I'm going to give people a little hack right here. If you live in, let's say we're coming out of Long Island right here, on Herbally Yours. So we're in Garden City, New York, and you can actually, if you find a barberry bush, which almost everybody has in their yard, you can just strip it. It does have stickers, so you have to cut the little branch and then strip it, and under there's going to be a beautiful dark gold. And that is the berberine, because berberine is a golden color. It's also quite high in alkaloids, so over a certain amount can be toxic. It's really not the kind of herb that herbalists will just use all the time. We'll use it in a targeted way. One of the main uses of things like golden seal and barberry bark and Oregon grapefruit is antimicrobial. So we will use it not so much for the blood-lowering effect, which they're talking about here. It also has. That's almost like a good side effect.
Exactly. And it's not only the blood sugar, because that's another great thing. When they looked in the studies and they saw what berberine was able to do as well, Ellen, it also helped as far as getting rid of the cholesterol levels by helping you to excrete the cholesterol. And make sure you didn't absorb as much, and make the receptors for LDL, that ugly cholesterol that we want out, it made it more sensitized. So therefore, you not only got the blood sugar lowering effect or blood sugar support, you got the same thing on the cholesterol side, which is key, because a lot of patients that are coming in, whether they're type 2 diabetics or they just have insulin insensitivity, they're still coming lots of times with high cholesterol and higher blood sugars as well.
Well, that's great information, and I want to tell our listeners that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live online at nccradio.org or iHeartRadio. And for more information on today's guest or topic, you can email us at whpc@ncc.edu. or naturalnurse.com. And today we have as our guest, we're very happy to have as our guest, Dr. Ken Redcross, medical doctor, and he's talking to us about how he would work with someone virtually or come to your house, which is really wonderful. And how would somebody find you, Dr. Redcross?
So look, all of my social media handles are Dr. Ken Redcross MD. And also my website was also Dr. Ken Redcross MD. And I really mean it. I love when people reach out on any of the social media platforms. And they allow us to really have a discussion and figure out how I can help in their health journey.
Well, why is weight loss such a draw? I have actually never understood that. But of course, I'm someone who, through having 2 kids, and I'm, no youngster anymore, but I never, my weight always stayed more or less the same. I don't know. I don't know what this big deal about it is. What is it?
Well, gosh. So one of the bigger things we're seeing here is the Western diet, everyone. So we in America, your studies are now showing about 3/4 of people in the United States are not at their optimal weight, whether they fit that classification of obesity or just overweight. So we're finding that we're having challenges with managing that, but no one really wants to do the things that work the best, Ellen, which are diet and exercise, right? And they kind of want that quick pill or that quick fix. But even as we talk about berberine, the benefits of berberine are still with diet and exercise. With the obesity epidemic, we've also been having a rise not only in diabetes, but also on what we call fatty liver. With more fat being deposited in the liver causes a lot of other problems as well. So we're seeing all these things that are coming from obesity, Ellen. And so I think when people were looking at Ozempic or even Wegovy, which is pretty much Ozempic, everyone, it's just more categorized and it's a higher dose for weight loss, people think that it's a simple and an easy fix. And I'm here to say that it really and truly is not, especially as we're seeing in the news a lot of the side effects that people are seeing with Ozempic now. That
wait. I don't want to just rush over that. I want you to share about that, because that's an important component. What are they saying that might be some of the negative effects?
So I should say this, everyone. So with Ozempic, one of the bigger things that it does, 2 in particular, there's a receptor in our brains that's called GLP, and that's a receptor that helps us regulate our hunger. So Ozempic helps there. The other thing it does is it decreases the gastric emptying time. That just means that it just slows up the amount of food that comes out of our stomach, so therefore we don't absorb as much of the nutrients, and then that gives you some of the weight loss. Now, what we are seeing, because so many people have had it now, we kind of have a study that's being done in real time when people have stopped the medication, but now they're not digesting properly. What's happening, Ellen, is that they're getting a syndrome called gastroparesis, everyone. That paresis means paralysis in a sense. Not everyone, but you're getting a small group of people who are realizing, like, gosh, I'm not taking the drug, or I'm still taking it and I cannot empty properly. I'm having nausea, vomiting all day. And now everyone's kind of saying, oh my gosh, this really isn't a silver bullet. So the point of me mentioning this, and I promise it's not to necessarily, bang on the Western medicine side of things. It's about making sure that we're educated, making sure that we understand some of the alternatives that I mentioned with berberine, and make sure that it's vetted, as I mentioned, with the doctor's preferred brand. But it's recognizing that you have to have that relationship with your doctor to understand some of the things that are going on with these medications. In this particular case, Ozempic.
Right. So like you said, do they recommend, or certainly you as a physician, if somebody did want to lose weight, are you going to tell them to incorporate the Ozempic, but along with diet and exercise changes?
Wow, that's a great question, Alan. And I'll be 100% honest with everyone. I have not written Ozempic.
Okay.
It's not because I don't think it doesn't work, everyone, but if you can't kind of tell, as I mentioned, even though I'm a Western trained physician, I am heavily on the Eastern side of healing, or the more alternative way of healing. And I know that if I can catch my patients early enough, Alan, that I could lean on something like berberine to help support their blood sugar, something else to help support their cholesterol. So I haven't had to write for Ozempic yet. And I'm also big on the diet and exercise piece. I talk a lot, and I hate to even say diet because I know everyone, that makes a lot of people cringe, and you don't know, is it paleo? Is it this? Is it no? The diet that I always ascribe to is one that I've created: 60-40-20, 60 grams of carbs, 40 grams of protein, and 20 grams of healthy fat with each meal. When I find people do that, Alan, they tend to kind of shed the weight, because we're talking about healthy things within that 20-40-60.
Well, let's talk about some of that. What would a plate look like that goes to Dr. Ken Redcross's 20-40-60 diet?
Oh, sure. So it's a great question. So the plate this morning, everyone, was a half a cup of beans, because beans, I can talk all day about beans. Beans have been associated with longevity, everyone. And one of the reasons why those in the Mediterranean may be living longer is we talk a lot about the importance of a healthy carb like beans. So this morning it was a half a cup of beans, and it was a full cup of wild rice, because that gets me the other healthier carb. The other thing I did as well was a banana with 2 scoops of almond butter. That's my healthy fat, everyone. That's my 20 grams of healthy fat, which I sprinkle with cinnamon. Cinnamon is what I mentioned as far as what's in the doctor's preferred brand as well, because it helps me regulate my blood sugar. The other thing I had was 1 egg and a half of cup of egg whites, which gets me that 40 grams that I wanted there. So within that, and I also do a cup of spinach. And all of that comes up to my 20-40-60. And the caloric intake there is just enough to keep me regulated and keep me at the weight. And so as I talk about ways for patients to kind of look at the plate that I put down and kind of switch and swap some of the things they want, instead of that 1 egg and the egg whites, they can maybe put in a 4 ounce of salmon instead and swap that out. They can also add a different banana, another banana, I should say, if they don't necessarily want the cup of rice. So all of these ways are ways for us to have that balance and not feel so tied in to having to, be ascribed or be named something for a diet to be real.
So what I'm noticing, and that's really very similar, and this is what I do. I have that in my refrigerator all set up, something very similar, that you have to have it available.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So I cook only once a week, and then I have in glass containers these kinds of foods, and then I'll put what I choose that day on a plate. Like it might be a scoop. I'm really big on quinoa because I don't like to use too many white bread kind of things.
Sure.
And then I would have eggs or something else, maybe even a piece of salmon like you said, and some vegetables. And I have it on there to where I could warm it up really easily, and I don't have to go look for those, in the morning.
Yeah. You're right. It has to be easy. And you hit 2 things that were important in what you said as far as talking about the vegetables. I try to tell patients to try to get 5 servings of vegetables throughout the day. That also helps to satiate you. It makes you full. And it also creates a large fiber load, which is great because your body is always burning calories, even while you're sitting with all of that fiber in your gut, which gets to the good bacteria and the natural probiotic as well. So there's a lot of benefits when you like to your point, Ellen, when you're already kind of pre-prepared to make these things a little bit easier for you.
It's super easy.
But
Right.
don't underestimate what you can do just in the kitchen.
Right, because what you didn't say and what I didn't say, we didn't have a bagel or,
No,
right.
no.
So really, I would say, almost zero wheat. And people go, how do you live? Well, by having real food around.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
thing.
And you mentioned the white food too. I tell everyone I really try to do your best to avoid the white food, bread, rice, pasta. So that's part of that as well. And it's funny, Alan. So when they try these things, they realize like, wow, this is pretty good. Then they realize like, wow, I didn't think it would fill me up, but it did. And then the other wow was they're like, my weight's actually come down. So I haven't had to go to Ozempic for my patient base at least.
And you would. I mean, as a physician, in terms of the use of a pharmaceutical, it's not like you never would use a
No, not at
pharmaceutical.
all. Exactly.
When it's
Exactly.
appropriate for that individual, usually as a short-term thing, not as a long-term solution, absolutely, drugs can be life-saving.
Absolutely. And we do know there are some other ones that aren't necessarily injectables and so forth. We know metformin has good data. Metformin obviously should be the first go-to in any case, anyway, when medications are needed for blood sugar. At least that's what the American Diabetic Association says. So there are some things that can help along the way. So yeah, obviously this is what I do. So I'm not necessarily resistant to it. I just haven't had to kind of pull that trigger to get to Ozempic. We've been able to kind of stay at stage 1 or 2 in a sense.
Because you see, if people do add in berberine, in particular, that one that you have looked at in terms of
Yeah,
results, which is doctors' preferred
preferred.
berberine,
Yeah.
that you see a change for the better. And that's really what being a doctor is all about.
No, it really is. And the other thing I like about as far as doctors preferred is that there's docs that we've all come around the formula, right? We've all kind of gone through it and vetted it and formulated it so that some of that heavy lifting of making sure that it's trustworthy and reputable is kind of easier for patients because when you go and leave this talk right now and you get on Amazon, there are so many to choose from. So,
Yeah.
hopefully that helps people kind of guide them
More
to
information.
one they can feel good about, one of the ones they should choose from.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest today, Dr. Ken Redcross.
Oh, thank you for having me on, Ellen, and take care, everyone.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us again next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.